American people voted Trump for president. I don't know if I can even say I'm surprised or not. On one hand, it's Trump, so anything is possible, but this election seemed different than when Hillary Clinton was run up against him. It seemed more hopeful, you could say. Many people wondering who voted for him, the gender, the demographics, the percentages of different communities. And I saw a tweet that said, for once, black people. Harris managed to get almost 72 million votes, whereas Trump received 75 million supporters. More than 140 million Americans voted in the 2024 US election. And according to VoteCast, 16% of black voters voted for Trump in 2024, up from 8% back in 2020. In comparison, 83% of black voters supported Kamala Harris, down from the 91% who supported Joe Biden back in 2020. Yes, Trump had won 13% of the community's vote in 2020 and 8% of the vote in 2016, which in itself was the highest level of support by black voters any Republican since George Bush back in 2000. Black voters have predominantly voted for the Democratic Party for decades, and this hasn't changed. A Gallup poll in 2023 showed that a proportion of black adults in the US who consider themselves Democrats had decreased from 77% in 2020 to 66%. Black people voting in the Western world has never been an easy thing. The UK and the US both having major elections this year. I think it's only right to see how some voters have voted. The US history with voting and African Americans is quite complicated, but I'm going to try to break it down very quickly. Back in 1866, Congress passed a civil rights bill which built the 13th Amendment, and this gave black Americans the right of citizenship. This included slaves. A lot of black Americans voted across the South, making 22 black men serve in the US Congress, including 2 in the Senate. The 14th Amendment, approved by Congress in 1866, granted citizenship to everyone born or naturalized in the United States, including former slaves. And this guaranteed equal protection of the laws to all citizens. It seems quite straightforward. And then in 1870, you had the 15th Amendment, stated that voting rights could not be denied by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Now, despite this, there was always a way to force black people from voting, especially in the South. Black voters faced a threat of intimidation and violence at the hand of different white supremacist groups, including the KKK. Southern state laws used such qualifications like literary tests, poll taxes, and other practices to stop the majority of black voters within that whole next decade. Everyone kind of knew what was going on, but because it was only by state, there wasn't much people could do about it. It technically didn't go against the 15th Amendment, but made sure that the 15th Amendment couldn't be entirely possible. These people be sneaky. This lasted for ages, and then fast forward to a bit, you have the Jim Crow era and segregation that made it even harder for black Americans to vote. In coming the 1950s and 60s and the civil rights movements, you have Martin Luther King, Black Panthers, Fannie Lou Hamer, you have Alice Walker, Ella Baker. So basically, you got a lot of black people now speaking up and giving a lot of attention to major events that happened to the African American community and African American history. And by 1969, 61% of black Americans had been registered to vote, compared to 23% a decade earlier. So, there's some progress here. Fast forward now to the 80s, where the percentage of black Southern voters were more than the rest of the country. Now we've got to speed this. Barack Obama became president in 2008. It was a major change for the African American community, seeing themselves in power through politics. In 2012, for the re-election of Barack Obama, the turnout of black voters exceeded that of their white voters for the first time ever in American history. In 2012, there were way more black voters than white to help re-elect Barack Obama. The percentage of eligible black voters was 66.6%. Black people have been able to come together to vote, but I think for many, looking back on Obama president, I still hear conversations like, did he actually help black people at all? Granted, a president is meant to help the whole country and not just a single community. Understood, I know that. But when the most powerful person in the world looks like you, you're hoping to somehow get some brownie points. But he'd want to fight the injustice in schools, in education, in the police system, etc. But I think many were just disappointed at how little nothing had changed. Harris was definitely, in my opinion, the better option, but many people had given up on politics at this point. A lot of voters in general also couldn't get over the fact that, yes, a woman could actually run the country. And so, even with this metric, if all Black Americans voted for the election, I still don't think you would see a result where Harris would come out on top, unfortunately. I wish she did, because that was a very dark day, I feel like. Now let's talk about the UK. The UK's history with their black voters has been easy either. With two major parties, the Conservative and the Labour, people have historically decided to vote between the two. The Conservative Tory party, as we call them, liberal economic policies, lowering tax from the rich, take responsibility away from the government. Something like what the Iron Lady did. We don't talk about Margaret Thatcher here. And support the middle class and well off. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and his wife were billionaires. Not millionaires, billionaires. But somehow his wife wasn't paying any taxes? Yeah. I don't know how that works out. The Labour Party, whose leader and Prime Minister of the country is Sir Keir Starmer, who some could say is more left-centre than left-wing. The Labour Party was born in the late 19th century through the frustration of working class people who were tired of the Liberal Party governing the country. Just for some context. They supported social. Tony Blair came into power in 1995 and started to lean into middle class ideals and traditional values that had been represented previously by the middle class. Some say Keir Starmer is exactly like Tony Blair, or almost on the same level. But to be honest, he's been in power for 4 months. That was the summer holidays. So, I'm going to give him grace. I'm going to see what he actually brings before judging him. There has been a bunch of reasons why the black population in the UK has lost faith in its Labour Party. You have Keir Starmer's comments on the war in Gaza, a lack of support of Palestinians, and at first not supporting foreign apartheid lost many voters from marginalised communities. Yes, since October 7th, 2023, there have been a lot of discussion about what's going on in Gaza for decades, might I just say. Many thought that Starmer and the media weren't supporting the help and needs of Palestinians and didn't want to address what had been going on for decades pre-October 7th. Another reason you had a lot of black people avoiding the Labour Party was their treatment for the first black MP in history, Diane Abbott. Listen, let me tell you guys, Miss Diane Abbott is a living legend. She's been a member of the Parliament for Hackney North and Stoke Newington since 1987. She served in the Shadow Cabinet for Jeremy Corbyn as Shadow Home Secretary from 2016 to 2020. Jeremy Corbyn, my king. Last year, Ms Abbott was suspended from Labour after suggesting that Jewish, Irish and traveller people experience prejudice but not racism all their lives, which did cause a long-running debate and process that saw her sit as an independent MP. She apologised later on Twitter and withdrew her remarks, but was only able to run as an MP for Labour once again, just a month before the July 2024 election. Keir Starmer gave her the blessing to stand as their MP, but to be honest, I don't think he really wanted to do it. But she's just so popular, and you had people like his deputy, Angela Rayner, saying she didn't see why she couldn't stand as a Labour MP. In March, it was revealed that Conservative donor Frank Hester said Diane Abbott makes you want to hate all black women, and said that the MP should be shot. Now, can we just pause for a minute? That is wild. I have never heard such violence like that in my life. That is crazy. From this, Diane said that she felt she didn't feel supported by the Labour leader. And let me tell you that this didn't sit right with anybody, let alone just black people. But what seems to be a clear pattern here is that when something happens to one of the community, It happens to all. That's the good thing about minority communities. There is a sense of collective unity that we need to help each other come together and support one another. Dan Abbott could be and is someone's auntie, someone's cousin. We see her and us. She is us. What's happening in Gaza right now, many people resonate. Many people see themselves in each and every victim. They want clarity on what their party stands for, which is why many has left the Labour Party. They feel they need someone that won't just cater to the majority, but make an active stand. To be completely honest, many black people probably would have voted Jeremy Corbyn for the Labour leader if they could. He ran the party before Keir Starmer and is quite known to be quite radical in his ways on his stance on social issues and going against the middle class. But because of that, it's probably made him a little bit too political for the Labour Party and the government. But nonetheless, he is what minority groups would want from a leader. Once stepping down from the Labour Party after making comments about the exaggeration of anti-Semitism in 2020, he then decided to run as an independent MP again for Islington and North this year and won. Let me tell you, that was a moment. Black Twitter was happy. I'm sure we've all seen the video of everyone cheering when Jeremy Corbyn won. But now you have a bunch of other parties. You have the Green Party, who Owen Jones said he was supporting. You have the Lib Dems. You have Reform UK. Nigel Farage. Now that's going to have to be a whole nother video because that man is very, very interesting. You get the gist. There are a lot of parties, okay? We can choose from people easily. We can switch if we feel like Labour isn't representing us or if someone feels like the Conservative Party isn't representing them. Given all this, I definitely think there is power in the black vote, and I know I've rambled on for a little bit too long now. Now, black people don't just want someone who's the lesser of two evils. They want a candidate that's for them, that understands them, that supports them, and that experiences their needs. This is what most voters want, to be honest. Not just black people, but most voters. And as more parties come into play, that only leaves for more room. That only leaves for more room for everyone to roam, research, and go against the major parties that have been shoved down our throat for decades. The next 4 years for both the US and the UK will be quite interesting and will definitely be a factor for which party is successful in the next election. Holding my breath because I have no idea what can happen. Anything can change in politics, but we'll just have to wait and see. I'm Serena the journalist. Yes, I am a journalist. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please comment on what you think about the video. I'm still new to this YouTube life, okay? I'm still new to it. And subscribe and hope to see you in my next video.